14 handicap, looking to create more consistent contact with the irons and generate more distance with the driver. We've got all swings from all angles. We're going to save that driver comparison for the last, but looking at your face-on view with the iron first, you can see the split finger grip or the 10 finger grip creating a lot of inconsistency with that club face through strike. So we'll get to your setup in a second, but let's look at your wrist angles at setup and at impact. Now at setup, there was a little bit of forward shaft lean, giving you the idea that you want to come back to that same position with that shaft leaning forward, but you can see quite a gap exposed between those hands. And when your hands have separated like that, your right hand is trying to forcefully push and flip that club face through to close it up and prevent it from blocking or slicing off to the right. That same bend in the left wrist continues after impact, leading into what is known as the chicken wing follow through, which looks and feels jammed up to the finish, and your weight doesn't quite get fully over to that front side. So a quick comparison, if we jump to the face on view of a Tour Pro Cam Smith, going to have that same shaft angle leaning forward, but even with a much shorter iron than your 6 iron, he's got a wider stance and more flex in the knees. So if you can begin by widening out a little bit and getting that grip set into an interlocking or overlapping position, your setup isn't too far off from this perspective. But if we jump back down the line with the iron, great view in the background by the way, arms and hands are not reaching out too much, could use a little bit more athletic knee flex, and the posture bend is okay. Let's get your path line up for a quick analysis on your plane, which begins inside with the face rotated semi-closed on the backswing, a little bit of excessive bend to the elbow, and the shoulder tilt could be a bit more down, but here is where you start to lose your consistency with the upper body slightly diving down into the ground, which then will force you to early extend or jump back up. Not enough weight is pushing you forward, you're trying to get a lot of rotation, but from there you don't get the low point as far forward enough, and that looks like a rather clean, sweepy strike. So you'd like to get your weight a bit more forward from setup. You can start the same way, but let's watch if there's any sway. Sorry for jumping around all kinds of videos, but you move off of it a little bit, really not too big of a sway, but again, not a lot of action from the lower body helping you twist or turn. Instead, there's a little bit of movement. Let's see where the hips go on the way down. They try to slide forward, they do open up, but you're still stuck in the mud. If you're more athletic and with more bend of the knees from the start, you can help push and drive off that back foot a bit more laterally to help you hit down and compress those irons a bit more. Your wrist angles and release through strike, that'll be played with your grip, so adjust that, and you'll also adjust to more club face control as you practice those irons. Consistency to me really means one thing, it means practice. You can do more of anything and be more consistent, but work on these key aspects and you'll be more consistently, better with your strikes. That's the idea or the theory. Setup with the driver, you've got some of the right ideas. Again, I'd like to see a wider back foot. Ball position relative to your left foot is okay, slightly flared open with a little bit of tilt behind. But the biggest issue with your driver is that you are so far away from the ball, reaching your arms miles away from your body. That tells me you've had a history of heel striking, so you've backed up to create some space. Let's look at your path line here from down the line. Ideally, if you're closer to the ball, it should be more through your belt buckle or navel, not up almost at your armpit here. So we'll keep both lines as your 3D path line. Initially, inside your plane and on the primary plane with the club, face okay, but your hand path works away. Similar story to the iron, it looks like it gets deep and flat enough, but over exceeding bends can cause some inconsistencies in that face angle, and you've got to stop diving into the ball from the top. You're standing pretty tall and in a fairly decent position to where if you start pushing and getting your weight to come forward, you'll be able to clear out without diving down and trying to pop back up. But all in all, I would not say major surgery required. A couple tips from your setup and a couple adjustments with this driver I think can create some more distance for you here. So let's hold on to this setup and get a tour comparison up with the driver down the line. Who hits most of the draw points in the swing? Starting with the setup, it may look like an extremely short club, but it's still a driver and he's much closer to the ball, getting that shaft plane exactly through the belt angle. Feet and body still relatively square. The takeaway does not force its way too far inside, rather just riding right nicely up the path. Face allowance for a slight bit more opening on the backswing, but those wrist angles get maintained through and through. And here comes the biggest change in your swing. Notice how the activity of the back leg and right knee is going to drive forward, rotating open and maintaining this tilt angle. It actually appears as if he's pulling back and away, whereas your movements are down and towards. That motion that is working up and away from the ball is creating an opposite effect of the club, generating speed down towards the ball. So as the body opens up, the club starts working down, and then the club path will really just continue on that plane with the arms extending and releasing the club to the finish. Now, it might just seem like standardized jargon for a tour pro, but again, that exhibits a lot of positions that you'd like to get to the top with draw. Hand depth behind, lower body clearance, and then shallowing of that path from the top, as the lower body is very active in clearing through. So if we snap back to you one more time down the line, again, closer, you're already tall enough, so you've got to get closer with those hands from the start and then work to retain your hand path on that same position. Let's just use those marks. Your hands are outside of those yellow lines from the beginning. They're going to stay outside of those yellow lines, so you've figured out if you just stand far enough away, you won't hit the heel, you'll hit the center. But stand closer and a little bit more in with those hands, working that hand path inside throughout your downswing. Good luck. SendToSwing.com.